Hey girls, how are you? Wow, I could have used some extra bronzer today. I look like a pale ghost. But it's been kind of a rainy day, and so like the hair is hopeless, the makeup's hopeless. It's just pouring cats and dogs, kind of cold. I know most of you people that don't live in California would be like, you are a baby. Like, that is not cold. I think it's like 60 degrees, but to us it's like the Arctic. It might as well be Antarctica. So I am not used to the rain, but I do enjoy it. So I hope you guys are having a good Wednesday. You guys can lay your questions on me at any time. I finally kind of like got my stuff together and have a little notebook here. So sometimes you guys ask questions that I truly don't know the answer of, and I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know everything, but I'm always happy to write something down. It always sparks my interest if it has something to do with hormones or physiology, and so I do have a little notebook here that I will be writing notes in here and there if I think of something or something comes up, or I think, oh, I gotta write that down for content in the future. But I have had one question that came in. Somebody asked, why am I still bloated if I feel like I'm eating enough? Because I often talk about here, if you're not eating enough, that can slow down transit time and then you can get bloated. Or I think she said she also feels bloated even when she's not eating. And this is usually going to boil down to digestive problems. You know, when we have an overgrowth of bacteria in the gut, we're going to see a lot of weird symptoms. Bloating is almost always bacteria that's off-gassing and creating space, gas. So a lot of times bloating is going to have to do with bacteria. And is it eating the food that we're giving it? Is it eating iron? Are there supplements that we're taking that could be aggravating it? Those are always things that we need to rule out. Sometimes it's foods that we're eating that we think are healthy when in fact they are not working for us. It's always a good idea to flip your ingredients over and check out what's actually in your food, because everyone that tells me they're eating healthy, I make them actually look at their ingredients in their food, and they start to really realize, like, wow, I'm not really eating as healthy as I thought, or I'm being exposed to a lot of additives that are really causing inflammation or irritation, and it's causing bloating. Also, excessive fiber in diets is going to cause you to constantly be bloated. So if you're constantly eating raw greens or a ton of leafy greens or cruciferous vegetables, the nature of those foods as insoluble fiber is going to feed that bacteria to create gas, and so you will be perpetually, eternally bloated if you're constantly eating bulky, fibrous foods. Hey Jessica, would you mind sharing your opinion on epidurals? Yeah, I mean, any type of anesthetic is going to be a problem, but epidurals specifically, there's not, too much evidence, but if you're talking about in regards to pregnancy, I have a problem with epidurals because it pulls from our birth experience. There's a few things we have to understand about birth, and you guys know that when we talk about the body, birth is included. The female body is obsessed with procreation, and even if you're not, your body is constantly either trying to drop an egg to potentially be fertilized or prepare the body for that potentially fertilized egg to be implanted. Your whole menstruating years is devoted to that. And so birth is a kind of an extension of our menstrual cycle. It's supposed to be, it's not always fun or amazing, but the world has really made menstruation and birth into something that should be really scary, that should be something that's medicated. It's almost like let's remove the tumor, right? And birth is actually supposed to be an incredibly ecstatic experience for women. Of course, it's hard and painful, but it's not something that you cannot endure. And the thing about epidurals is, my problem with them is we're more prone to tear. So a lot of times once we get an epidural, we're most likely going to need a snip. And so we want to I don't want to say a word that's going to get me like censored or blocked. So a lot of times we can't feel our contractions, and so we're not going to push properly. When you're pushing a baby out, you're supposed to push with your body, or not really even push at all. You're supposed to let your uterus contract your baby out. But when you are numb from the waist down, you can't do that. So a lot of women are more prone to tearing, but a lot of times a doctor will just cut you before you even tear. And once we get a cut, we are actually more, or as it's called an episiotomy. Once we get an episiotomy, remember, when you cut through muscles, it's very different than when you tear through muscles. Your skin and your muscles tear in a way that allows them to repair themselves in a different way than if they're cut. They usually never heal quite the same. And so I know you're probably like, why is she talking about episiotomy when, you know, you're talking about an epidural? But it all goes into each other, because once you get that epidural, a lot of times you have to get Pitocin, and then Pitocin is kind of gonna cause those unruly, harsh contractions of the baby's head against the cervix, and then it's going to lead to more likelihood of having a, you know, emergency C-section, which doctors like because it makes them way more money, right? You know, why would you perform a natural birth that makes you $6,000 when you can perform a surgery that makes you $50,000? So, you know, I truly think the birth industry is an industry, and it's run by, it's meant to push fear into you, so you're afraid to have a child in the way that you maybe feel naturally inclined to. But I think every woman's choice is going to be different based on her experience regarding birth and her thoughts regarding birth. But I really encourage women to shift their thoughts regarding birth. I think it can be an ecstatic experience. And for a lot of women who have had natural births, they will absolutely agree. You know, after that birth, they felt like an absolute goddess. And I've seen so many of my friends go through really traumatic hospital births with Pitocin and epidurals, and I don't want to do that myself. So, you know, I know too much, and sometimes I see too much, and so I'm just like, those drugs, and I don't want to bring a drugged baby into this world. I don't want my baby's first moments to be like completely drug induced if I can help it. Of course, you know, emergencies happen and some things just need to get done, but a lot of times, that begins way before the birth even occurs. A lot of people don't realize, you know, your health before you get pregnant and during pregnancy is everything when it comes to an actual birth. Sorry, that was a long answer to a short question. But when it comes to epidurals, like for other things, pain and necessities, I think it should just be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. If I wanted to try Ovasitol, would that be okay? I'm eventually wanting to switch over to that instead of metformin. Yeah, I mean, Ovasitol is one of those things where it is a sugar alcohol that's vitamin B8, so it does have that a similar shift to the microbiome. But a lot of people that come off metformin find that they don't really need metformin. They didn't really need it in the first place. It was kind of a band-aid in the first place. And so Ovasitol or B vitamins in general tend to be a better option. And a lot of times it might appear like, oh, when we come off metformin, things are worse than they were before. But in reality, it was kind of a band-aid and things were continuing to get worse. But then once you come off, it's like you're actually starting to see the visible signs of that. So sometimes we don't see the visible signs and we don't think it's happening, but it is happening. So Ovasitol is always an okay thing to try unless your doctor tells you differently, but it's a pretty harmless supplement and tends to be beneficial for a lot of women. Some women absolutely see nothing. Like when I take an Ovasitol, I just get really hungry and really angry, and I'm just like, I don't really like it. And I've always felt that way, but not every woman feels that way. Hey Jessica, more than a month, my breast is very sensitive. Why? Well, I mean, I don't know. I could, you know, fresh out the gate, I'll have to say I have no idea why your breasts are sensitive, but I can make a few guesses. Keep in mind that estrogen being elevated in relationship to progesterone can drive sensitive breast tissue, so making sure we're eating our raw carrot every single day or good soluble fibers like, or insoluble fibers like mushrooms, that are really well cooked can be helpful. Also, you know, considering vitamin E, sometimes castor oil packs are helpful, sometimes coffee enemas are helpful, but I don't know anything about you, so I'm not really sure what is going on. I couldn't say, but are you pregnant? That would be the first question I would ask myself if my breasts were tender for a month straight and that was not normal for me. That would be the first question I would ask myself. If that's not a possibility, then I would go to, you know, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you under extra stress? You know, evaluating your whole life and saying, what has maybe changed in the past month that could be affecting my body's ability to detoxify and get the hormones to where they need to go, which a lot of times is metabolized and out of the body. What are your thoughts on MTHFR? I think it's really something to be concerned with. Also, can B vitamin deficiency cause heart palpitations? I think MTHFR is just a load of hogwash. That's my new word. I don't know why I keep saying it. I don't know where it came from. I just like it now. So I think I've said it in like 3 lives in the past like 3 days. And I don't want to say it doesn't exist, because it absolutely does, right? Gene mutations totally exist. But how important are they? I always talk about that one. Remember that one Times article? It was like in 2005. It was like, epigenetics, the cure for cancer is on the horizon. And here we are in 2019, and we're still saying like slang terms. I mean, come on. Epigenetics didn't even touch anything, which shows me again, we are proven time and time again that genetics do not dictate our health. We know that, but we keep buying into it. And then on top of it, here we are running these genetic tests, and big data companies are buying our information. What are they doing with your DNA information? You don't know, because you have no rights over it once you spit in that tube. So I don't like it. I think it's kind of a push to get people's DNA, which I don't know why. It kind of creeps me out. And then I also... I've seen nothing. I've never seen someone be like, wow, I ran a genetic test and I followed all the recommendations and I saw incredible healing and I'm healed. Like, so many people spend thousands of dollars on supplements, they're chasing their tail, and they're not a lick better. Why? Because over-methylation is just as bad as under-methylation, and thyroid function affects methylation, minerals affect methylation. The health of your cells themselves are going to affect how your body detoxifies and how your genes are expressed. Your environment affects how your genes are expressed. So you can have genes that aren't even affecting your health or are affecting your health in huge ways, and you have no idea which ones are. So I think it's just really important to keep things in perspective. I don't think it's wrong. I just think we kind of like chase all these really random trails, and it ends up just really stressing us out and making us feel overwhelmed, like our health is just absolutely hopeless. And I kind of find that ignorance is bliss, in the sense of like, boil it down to the things you can control. Like, what can you control? You can't control your genes. That's over. That's done with, boom, boom, your parents did it like years ago, and there you are. So you need to now focus on what you do have control over, which is your immediate environment, which is your nutrition, which is your exercise, your sunlight exposure, your stress levels, how you set up your life so that you can enjoy it. You can make time for fun. You can say no more. You can, you pick and choose your priorities carefully. Like, it's very important to always keep things in perspective, because I think sometimes we'll see a bit of information. There's so much information out there. There's information overload, and we just run with it because we're so hoping that it's going to be the answer. But in reality, it just ends up stressing us the heck out. So I encourage people who know they have MTHFR, don't take non-methylated B vitamins. Like, don't do that. But overall, support your health just like anyone else. Get your minerals balanced, get your magnesium levels up, get your potassium levels up. Make sure you're eating a pro-metabolic diet where you're not eating tons of foods that your body has to break down. When I talk about plant foods being hard to break down, I'm not anti-plants, but I do think that an excessive amount of plant foods, and then all these plant-based products out there that people are switching out for their animal-based products, are really full of synthetic vitamins like folic acid and synthetic vitamin A and synthetic vitamin D. All of those synthetic vitamins are not the same as the real stuff, and those are really, really harsh on the liver. So we need to just be really conscious of what we're eating. What are we actually consuming? What's the majority of our diet made up of? What's the majority of our building blocks that we're putting in our mouth made up of? And a lot of times that fixes 90% of the problems. We just are so focused on chasing all these fads that we forget that we have biological systems that need to be supported. But yeah, I'm not like, I don't really care about MTHFR, and I like, people tell me like, I got this $100 test, and I'm like, I don't care. To me, it's useless. I've never seen it be beneficial to anyone. And I've had so many clients come to me with like, oh, they're like, I have MTHFR. And I'm like, ooh, and then I'm like, okay, like back to what we're focusing on. So it just is kind of one of those things where it doesn't really end up helping anyone from what I've seen. Now, of course, there's like a whole movement. I think it's Dr. Ben Lynch, I want to say. It sounds familiar. Like the whole dirty jeans thing. And I understand, but I think it's also like you're chasing down one rabbit hole when there's like so many rabbit holes. So I err on the side of caution because I haven't seen any like benefit come from that. How do you incorporate sugar when you have candida overgrowth problem? Well, keep in mind a candida overgrowth problem is a slow metabolism problem. See, a lot of people think like, oh my God, I can starve my candida. I'm like, your candida actually releases things into your bloodstream that cause your body to increase stress hormones and eat yourself, make glucose, and feed it anyways. So your candida can still get glucose even when you're not eating it, I promise. And the thing is, you kind of get into this vicious cycle where you are eating, you have yeast because you're not fueling your body correctly in the first place, or you have a lot of stress that's suppressing your metabolism, which is suppressing your ability to digest foods. And then food is slowly moving through the digestive tract, which allows it to ferment a lot more than if you had a high quality or a fast-paced transit time. You want your food moving pretty fast-paced through your digestive system. You want your body digesting and assimilating nutrients quickly, efficiently, and well, and not having things just kind of sluggishly sit there. That's going to lead to a lot of fermentation. And so a lot of times yeast is a problem in the first place because of our habits. And so sometimes we have to bite the bullet and go through that yeast overgrowth for a couple of months, not really stress about it. I know we always, when we have like candida or yeast, we're always told like, don't eat sugar. And it's like a lot of sugar, like simple sugars, are going to be absorbed directly into the stomach before they even hit the intestines. Yeah, like whole fruits are going to go through the small intestine. So if you have yeast in the small intestine, that's a problem. But here's the deal. We all have candida. Candida is not bad in itself. It's an overgrowth of it. And that's an immune problem. That's a thyroid problem. That's a full body digestive breakdown problem that cutting sugar is not going to fix. It's actually going to make it worse. We first need to be fueling our body regardless of the problems that we have. We need to stop focusing on individual problems because it doesn't really fix anything. We're like, oh, I'm starving my yeast. I'm like, no, you're not. It's just going dormant until the minute you eat sugar again, and then you're going to have worse problems because now your metabolism is working even slower, your thyroid's even slower, your stress is even higher, and a stressed out body is not going to keep yeast in check. So yeast needs to be dealt with while somebody's already eating a metabolically supportive diet. Yeah, it can bring on a lot of symptoms, but you can do things that keep it at bay. You can always still work on killing yeast while you're fueling healthy metabolism, but it's going to be like chasing your tail if you're not getting your whole digestive function and metabolic function back up to par. What are your thoughts on cod liver oil or algae omega supplements? You guys know I don't think omega-3s are a good thing to supplement. In fact, I think they're dangerous to supplement and save your money. I think vitamin E supplements are much more beneficial, and we're much more deficient in that. Hey Jess, happy Wednesday. Hi Gina. I got your DM. That's amazing. Gina's been following me for so long now. She's been working on her gut issues. She was post keto. When she first found me, she was like still, I think, like kind of like in that low carb hemisphere, and I was talking about how low carb had kind of destroyed my gut as well. And I think like she has really just done so much work and healing work, and she's doing so amazing. She's seeing so much results and success, and she has just it's been hard work, and I know it's been a struggle, but she's incredible. Keto, Whole30, vegan, I feel so lost and need a change in my food diet. Stop doing diets. Diets are a manipulation to make you buy shit. So you need to eat a biologically supportive diet. You need to go back to eating real foods. Don't buy into the diet. Buy into what your body actually needs. I encourage a metabolically supportive diet, so getting your carbohydrate from easy to digest carbohydrates like root vegetables and fruits and squashes and things like that. Getting your fats from whole food animal saturated sources like ghee and grass-fed butter. Coconut oil is also a great source of saturated fat. High quality dairy. I do raw dairy, but it's not for everyone. Everyone has to kind of do their own research, but I highly recommend like non-homogenized grass-fed dairy. And then protein, eggs, fish, collagen, grass-fed beef. Lots of high quality proteins are available. And so not really focusing on what diet you're on, but really focusing on what foods do I want to nourish my body with and provide my body with the most minerals and the most vitamins and the most nutrients so that my body has an abundance of the tools it needs to heal. And that's what we should be focusing on 100%. And we need to stop getting so concerned with diets. Diets will get us nowhere. Do I have to make my sourdough? Should it be whole wheat? Is there somewhere I could buy it? That really depends. I am highly against fortified iron wheat. And a lot of times sourdough that you buy at the store is they're going to use flour that's been fortified with iron. If you can find sourdough that hasn't been fortified with iron, then that's all good, but it doesn't need to be whole wheat. In fact, most people do better on a refined wheat bread. That's why ancient Egyptians refined their flour even without technology because they knew that people that ate the whole bran were sicker than people that didn't. So if you can find just a simple sourdough, traditional sourdough should just have flour, water, salt, and a sour starter. That's it. There should be no yeast. There should be no added extra ingredients. If there is, it's not true sourdough. I've actually had a lot of success buying, you can find gluten-free sourdough or traditional sourdough on Amazon. You can find it on Etsy. There are a lot of people that actually home make sourdough on Etsy, which is really cool because you're really truly buying homemade bread from the farmer's market, but it's people that are making small batches in their own home, which I think is really incredible. And then if you can find some at your store, I think it's always a hit or miss. I've sifted through my farmer's market, all my local health food stores, and I haven't been able to find a sourdough that is not made with flour that has iron added to it. I have been able to find one that's just flour, water, sour starter, and salt, but I don't do well with iron. I have a history of gut issues. I was even diagnosed with celiac disease once in a blue moon, it was 7 years ago. So I'm very careful with what I put into my gut grain wise, and I don't mind doing an einkorn wheat, but I don't do well with modern wheat. So my latest post on sourdough kind of explains heirloom grains are always best. They're always going to be easier digested, but some people do fine with just regular sourdough, and they're like, you know what, my one piece of bread a day at breakfast is not going to do anything to my health, and it's worth it. And I think that's completely understandable. I think it just is really based on the individual. My sis has been getting heavy nosebleeds since she was a kid. She has PCOS, thyroid issues, and anxiety. Does this relate? Hell yeah. So keep in mind, guys, that estrogen affects the clotting of the blood. Estrogen is anti-thyroid. Estrogen drives PCOS, and excessive estrogen in relationship to progesterone is going to drive anxiety. So, she most likely, and I can't say for sure, this is always speculation, I'm not a doctor, but I would say, what have her habits been her whole life? Has she eaten a lot of modern wheat products, lots of polyunsaturated fats like canola oil, soybean oil? Did you guys grow up on junk food? That's something to keep in mind. That's going to drive excessive estrogen. Has she ever been on birth control? That's a source of xenoestrogens. Do you guys filter your water? That could be a source of estrogens. How about the hygiene products that you've used? Do you do a lot of self-tanner or lotions or tons of hygiene products that are super toxic? Those all have endocrine disruptors or fake estrogens that are going to affect our body's ability to detoxify estrogen and almost act like estrogen in the body. When it comes to all of those issues, detoxification needs to be supported, blood sugar balance needs to be supported. There are certain foods that should be avoided, like polyunsaturated fats and junk foods and things like that. And then also making sure progesterone levels get up. But I highly recommend diving into the work of Ray Peat. I think that would be very helpful for her, because nosebleeds can definitely point to a clotting issue, which is usually a stress issue. Can doxycycline cause acne? Getting it increasingly on cheeks where I didn't before, been on medicine for 3 months. Yeah, I mean, antibiotics can cause worse problems, because keep in mind that antibiotics are, they're pretty powerful, and they have the ability to raise iron, and iron is the driver of acne. So keep in mind that if our liver and our kidneys are sluggish, or they can't store any more iron, iron's going to continue to circulate through the blood. A lot of times it will go towards the brain, but the brain won't take up iron. It's not a mineral the brain needs. So a lot of times it will go out the face, and iron feeds bacteria, right? Which is why a lot of times antibiotics do work for acne, but when you go off of them, you actually end up getting it back worse than before, because the bacteria is still there. It was just kind of subdued. So doxycycline is usually a Band-Aid for acne when it does work, but when it doesn't work, it a lot of times is wiping out the gut microbiome. It's harsh on the liver, and so it's just exacerbating the things that were already driving acne. But yeah, it's totally possible anything is totally possible, right? If you don't necessarily have the money to get blood tested for hormones, what are signs that a woman may have progesterone imbalances? Yeah, I mean, so usually you're looking for estrogen dominance-like symptoms. You're looking for, in the second half of the cycle, the symptoms are going to usually be worse. So maybe like a painful ovulation. Sometimes women have such bad excessive estrogen that they have like a painful or symptomatic ovulation. They're really irritated around the time they ovulate. They maybe don't feel that good. They feel a lot of pain and cramping. But usually excessive estrogen is going to show up the second half of the cycle during the luteal phase, and it's going to be concentrated more towards the period. So things like headaches, migraines, breast tenderness is a huge signaler that we have excessive estrogen, or we're not detoxifying it well. Having like anxiety and depression the days leading up to our period, feeling really exhausted and fatigued, bloated. Remember, progesterone is a diuretic, and so if we are super bloated or retaining water all over, when you like press on your skin and you're like, whoa, I am retaining a lot of water, that's usually a progesterone deficiency. What else? Not being able to sleep during the second half of the cycle, usually leading up to our period. That's another big sign. And having just like no chill. You know what I mean? So there's like anxiety, which definitely it could be a symptom of low progesterone. But then there's also like, just like you kind of feel like snappy, and you kind of feel like on edge, and you just don't feel like yourself. Like you don't feel chill and relaxed and comfortable in your own skin. You kind of feel gross and just like icky and not yourself. And that is usually a sign as well. So there are a lot of signs, but it's hard to know. And sometimes supplementing progesterone is not the answer. I know a lot of people are like, well, how do I get my progesterone levels up quick? And they just jump to a supplement. But sometimes supplementing something is not going to fix our issues. We actually have to, get our liver working better, get our gut working better, so we're moving estrogen better, get our nutrients and minerals and vitamins up so that we're making more progesterone, get our stress levels down so we're responding to that progesterone in the cell well. There are so many caveats to hormones, and so it's very important to not just jump on like the supplementing progesterone train. But some women, but every woman is allowed to experiment for herself. So I think it's one of those things where there's, and I would be a hypocrite to say like, oh, don't do that, because I've been the type of person that like anything I do, I'm like, I'm gonna try that. I'm trying it, I'm trying it now. And that's how I've learned so much about my own body. I've experimented over and over and over and over again until I've really found what works and what doesn't work. And then I figured out the why afterwards, which I don't recommend for everyone, because it is a life of pain and turmoil, but it's how I learn. It's how I practice science in that sense. So I think with low progesterone, it is okay to go on symptoms a lot of times if we're having a really rough luteal phase or even a really rough period. If we're having lots of clots, we're really, really heavy, or we find that we are having really long periods. Our periods should really only last like 4 to 5 days, if that. Or if we're like constantly like spotting and then bleeding, spotting, bleeding, spotting, bleeding, like just having like a weird cycle. We should just shed our uterine lining and then be done. It shouldn't be like this weird, dramatic, ongoing thing. We can usually go by symptoms to see what's going on, and excessive estrogen is usually going to be combined with low progesterone. Can red light therapy increase vitamin D? No, not normally, but it does have other benefits, and red light in itself is therapeutic. It's needed along with cholesterol and vitamin A to make hormones, so it is therapeutic in itself. Just because it's not making vitamin D doesn't mean it's not necessary. You mentioned being careful with sterilizing, but what are the benefits of derma rolling and dry brushing? Yeah, so dry brushing is awesome. I love anything that's going to move the lymphatic system, and I need to talk about this more. I need to talk about a lot of things more because I have been in this industry for so long. I do some things without explaining them to you guys, or I just have, routines in my daily life that I do all the time that I've done for years because I at one time was like, oh my gosh, the lymphatic system is so important, and it always has been. I just have kind of tied it into my routine and forgot about it. And so the lymphatic system is kind of this system of interstitial fluid. So we have this fluid throughout our body, and of course we have blood, and blood has its own pump, but the lymphatic system does not have its own pump. It relies upon our movement. And so our movement is actually what moves that lymphatic system around the lymphatic fluid and gets to where it needs to go when it dumps into the colon or the bloodstream to be detoxified. And so it's very important to move the lymph system, especially if we're not really good about exercising, or we sit a lot, we're very sedentary. A lot of times our lymphatic system will actually become very stagnant. If you've seen cellulite, if you've seen weird dimples on your body, if you feel like just fat kind of distributes weird or water stores weird, can be a sign of stagnation. And so body brushing is a really great way. It doesn't have to be done really hard at all because your interstitial fluid is not that deep, and it really does stimulate the lymphatic system and get that lymphatic fluid moving, even if just done 5 minutes before a shower, which I always do it for about 5 to 10 minutes before I hop in the shower. Sometimes I like to do it on wet skin. I just prefer it, but either way, you're moving your lymphatic system. Something like a fascia blaster also does that, or even like doing like a hot washcloth will do that as well. Like, if you don't even need a fancy body brush, but moving the lymphatic system can really help with detoxification. You're moving junk. Just think about it. You put lotion on your skin or whatever. You got exposed to pesticides in the air. That landed on your skin and it's been absorbing all day. And where does it go? It doesn't just like magically go poof. It goes into that interstitial fluid a lot of times, or into the bloodstream. And so we want to make sure both of those things are moving and working optimally. And then when it comes to derma rolling, I think you mean like the needles on the skin. That actually creates small punctures in the skin. And so whenever you wound yourself, you've seen if you get a paper cut, right? It kind of swells up, a lot of blood rushes to it, kind of like throbs for a while, because your body's actually going to that site and healing those things. Well, on the face, when you do like a small damage, and I'm sure our dermatologist listening to me like, oh my gosh, she's butchering it, because I'm not an expert, but you're causing your skin to actually have to repair itself. It's creating more collagen and elastin. And so in theory, you're actually forcing your face to continue to heal itself. And a lot of people say that it also allows product to get deeper into the skin, but I'm not really sure in regards to product how we're supposed to use it. Like, if we're supposed to use it before and then put product on, I feel like that would kind of burn. I'm really not sure. So like a derma roller, I need like a derma roller instructional how to. I have never used it on my face. I've used it on my hair as an experiment to like get hair to grow, like for hair growth. But yeah, I've never used it for face stuff because I've always been kind of afraid. But I'm actually ordering one right now. There's one in my cart on Amazon. So I've been wanting to get one of those, like a little jade roller and a gua sha kit, and that I'm taking my face routine to the next level. I'm facing a partial hysterectomy because of my chronically low iron. Ferritin is at a 4 consistently. I'm an FN member. Will it still work for me if I have to do the surgery? Have you ever gotten your hemoglobin checked? I highly recommend looking into the work of Morley Robbins and listening to specifically his podcast on iron. It might just blow your mind and make you think twice about using ferritin to check your iron levels. But yeah, I'm not really sure what your case is, but of course, if you're just getting your uterus removed, as long as you still have your ovaries, usually there's not a problem with a hysterectomy. I mean, there can be, little things that maybe pop up down the line, but a partial hysterectomy that keeps the ovaries is usually way more successful for hormonal balance than a full hysterectomy. But I do find that a lot of doctors are quick to do hysterectomies, but I'm sure you've thought of that, and I'm sure you've kind of gotten a second and a third and a fourth opinion, and you guys have really determined that it's the low iron. But I just highly recommend, if you're using ferritin as a marker for iron, to make sure you're getting the right things tested. And keep in mind that copper plays a huge role in how iron is utilized. Zinc plays a huge role. Magnesium plays a huge role. There are other minerals that are completely necessary for us to utilize iron properly. And if we're very deficient in those, then sometimes our iron levels will respond to that. You also have to keep in mind that our body does hide iron away from pathogens. So people that have really bad bacterial infections, keep in mind bacteria eat iron. And so a lot of people will become anemic on a blood test because their body is actually hiding iron away from pathogens. So there's a lot of caveats to iron, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about a hysterectomy and fully nourished being compatible. That's not a problem as long as you still have your ovaries. I noticed that you mentioned the iron, and I just kind of wanted to bring your awareness to some things to look into. Any advice on how to manage endometriosis and heal? Endometriosis is usually driven by environmental toxins. So that's the first thing I always do with endometriosis clients is, where are you getting exposed? If you're using anything that's heavily fragranced, anything that, have you recently bought new furniture, everything, gotta get those things out of your environment, because those dioxins are going to be a problem. And then filtering water is very important. Just making sure cleaning up as much of your lifestyle and environment as possible, because people with endometriosis are just incredibly sensitive to dioxins and pesticides and endocrine disruptors. The second thing is, keep in mind, endometriosis and endotoxins have a lot in common. So endotoxins are bacterial toxins or lipopolysaccharides that come from the gut. A lot of times endometriosis is partially being driven by issues that are occurring in the digestive tract. And so we work on digestion, we work on eating nutrient-dense, easy to digest foods, not a lot of starches or grains, lots of roots and fruits, mostly fruits, because they tend to lower endotoxins. Starches tend to raise them. And working on digestive health in general, digestive enzymes, systemic enzymes, spore-based probiotics, proper prebiotics like Just Thrive prebiotics, really working on gut health and making sure the food is there to support it. Lots of gelatin, collagen, bone broth, those types of things. So endometriosis is not a simple condition. It's being driven usually by gut health in part, environmental toxins in part, and there's always usually a mineral component as well. Iron, copper, magnesium, all of those things need to be handled. Stress is a huge component. So really digging to the bottom, just like with anyone else. I never really focus on conditions because it's always different. What's driving a condition is very individual, and there are underlying imbalances that drive all disease. And it's very, it's expressed in all those those imbalances are going to be expressed in different ways, which is why your doctor looks at all the bullet points and says, oh, you have this, and this, and this. Well, my medical textbook grouped all those symptoms together and called it this, and that's why you got that diagnosis. But what we've been trained to think, a disease is a very different thing than this disease. But in reality, the body's expressing its imbalances how it's going to, and it's being grouped into one disease category or the next. We always have to get to the bottom of all of our imbalances, regardless of which disease that we have or have been diagnosed with. Will you ever do a what's in my fridge or grocery shop haul? Yeah, of course. I will definitely do a grocery shop haul. I'm not like a really exciting person. Like, I'm not like, oh, I got so much new stuff. I'm very basic. I'm very like grandma when it comes to shopping. I eat very similar things daily because it's easy and I like them. I think that's very important. I think a lot of people are so disenchanted with their foods because they're eating so much rabbit food that they have to like create these like magnificent dishes just to be able to like choke it down. And I'm just like, I really like my food, so I don't really need to like make it into something else. I'm really great with like a pan fried fish and roasted potatoes. Like, I could eat that every night, So I will absolutely do those things. I'm actually getting ready. The YouTube channel, I call it the YouTube, is getting ready. So the reason why I haven't been as active on Instagram is there's a lot of shifts happening in my business, but Instagram is not the only platform I want to be on. And so I have been, preparing to kind of diversify. And once I get on YouTube, there will definitely be more like day in the lives and what I eat in a day and what's in my fridge type deals. I just can't thank you enough for all your time you spend and the info you share. It has helped me so much with my gut, slow healing, but little by little things are getting better. Yay! Do you eat liver every day, or would only the liver pills be every day? I don't eat liver every day. I couldn't possibly do that. I usually will take liver pills every day, and then I'll have liver like once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week, depending. I would like to get that to be more, but until I can stomach it, probably not. I did see Matt Blackburn doing like little chunks of liver they like froze and swallowed, and I do that. I just did it in a different way. Like, I don't eat as much of them. What I do is I cut liver into small little swallowable size pill forms, and then I freeze them on a cookie sheet, and you freeze them for usually like 14 days is a good time. And then you can swallow them like a pill, and I'll just swallow them frozen. But what he was doing was like freezing them in a little plastic baggie and then defrosting them and swallowing them defrosted, which I was like, I'll try that. I don't know what's the difference. I mean, I guess like my 98.6 degree body will defrost the liver inside of me instead of me having to defrost it myself. So that's the only way I can get liver down really regularly. But I have been inspired to try pate again. I kind of want to like try to spread it on some sourdough toast and see if I like it. So yeah, I'll let you guys know. What are the best foods to heal your liver? Plenty of animal protein. So make sure we're getting about 100 grams of protein a day. Saturated fats like ghee, grass-fed butter, all that good stuff. Vitamin E, vitamin A rich foods like high quality dairy, for example. And then, lots of B vitamins. B vitamins are always king when it comes to liver health, which is why I am a huge fan of liver, but I really like unfortified brewer's yeast, things like that. Chlorophyll is a really great integration once you've gotten the basics down of just nutrient dense foods. We need to make sure we're getting enough carbohydrates when it comes to liver health, because the liver needs to have glycogen at all times stored. And so lots of fruits, root vegetables, even little bits of like high quality sugars like organic cane sugar, coconut sugar, maple syrup, those are really supportive. And then I already said B vitamins. I'm trying to think of what else. Chlorophyll is a good addition, especially if you're just trying to get things moving. Adding a splash of chlorophyll to some lemon water every day can be a really great way to really start working on liver health. Things like castor oil packs and coffee enemas are really supportive. But yeah, there are no like foods to heal your liver. It's more just like eat well, eat frequently, stop eating so many refined starchy carbohydrates like grains and beans and nuts and seeds, and don't overburden your intestines with tons and tons and tons of fibrous foods. They can be hard to digest, but that's really the main components of eating for liver health. Is there a reason conventional medicine docs don't do or know about HTMA, Dutch, and GI map? I don't think there's like a reason they don't. It just doesn't make them money. So a lot of times functional lab tests are going to be out of pocket because insurance doesn't cover them. And so doctors are really usually a part of the insurance machine, and so they're not going to deal with the hassle of running tests that insurance doesn't deem medically necessary. And so, functional medicine is not seen as medically necessary. They're just trying to keep you guys alive, keep us alive. That's it. If we have to be on 20 medications, they do not care. That actually makes them more money. So, they're just trying to keep our hearts beating pretty much, like as long as we're alive, we're good. And so I personally like to function optimally. I personally like to feel really good and live a really good life, but that's just me. And so I opt for mostly functional medicine in regards to my health, but that's usually why. Is steamed broccoli and cauliflower still hard on the gut to digest? In high amounts. It's going to be goitrogenic, so it's going to be, it has goitrogens, which are pretty anti-thyroid. There's no need to avoid them at all costs. It's just I don't understand why people eat them excessively. They don't provide a lot of nutrients. They're pretty, low calorie, lots of anti-nutrients. They don't give you a lot of nutrients. They take a lot of energy to break down. And a lot of times people just feel eternally bloated when they're eating lots of those foods, but those foods aren't bad. And it's good to get them in, once in a while due to, based on your tolerance. So a lot of people are excessively consuming cruciferous vegetables and they're like, why am I so bloated? And I'm like, because of those. So if you feel bloated with them, then it's a good sign that maybe a little less, but cooking them definitely needs to happen. Cruciferous vegetables should never, ever, ever be eaten raw. Thoughts on melatonin to help fall asleep? Is it bad? It's the hormone of winter, so it is a hormone, and it is definitely metabolically suppressive. So if you're trying to get your metabolic function better, get your thyroid function better, you don't want to be taking a hormone that's suppressing your whole metabolism. But that's a kind of controversial thought. Not everyone thinks that, but I've seen it in myself and I've seen it in tons of people that I've worked with, and they think it's harmless, so they're just taking it to sleep. And I'm like, if you need it to sleep, then there's a problem. And it's not the best supplement for sleep. If you need to do things to help you sleep, I would do a million other things before I relied upon melatonin. And how we live during the day is going to affect how we sleep at night, really. So, thoughts on GLA sap? I think it's borage oil, right? Oh yeah, GLA. I'm not a fan of all these weird oils. I don't think they're going to be the most effective bang for your buck. My favorite components and nutrients are first going to be a nutrient-dense diet. So that's the first thing. Second thing is going to be grass-fed beef liver, whether it's supplemented or eaten. Oysters are also incredible. High quality organic coffee is another amazing source of nutrients. And then magnesium is going to be really, really important. Making sure we're getting enough potassium in the form of, fruits, fruit juices, coconut water. And then if we can't, even supplementing some extra potassium is important. But yeah, those are going to be so much more important to me than weird oils and things like that. Is temporary Whole30 okay to figure out food intolerances? Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. I just think it's people aren't seeing the big picture when it comes to food intolerances. It's always why do we have food intolerances? Yeah, stay away from gut inflammatory foods. But saying dairy as a whole is inflammatory is just ridiculous to me, because every food should be treated differently. Meaning that the cup of milk I drank and the Parmesan cheese I ate and the American cheese I ate are all separate foods. They're all different. My body's going to react to them differently. So if I just said dairy is bad, I'm going to cut out all of those. Or if I said dairy is good, I'm going to eat all of those, regardless of how my body reacts. And so I think that cutting out whole food groups ends up really hurting us in the long run. And then when we tie them back in, it's like we solve our problems. Like, our food intolerances are there for a reason in the first place. Very often we have slow metabolism, we're constipated, we have bacterial overgrowth in our gut. We're just focusing on symptoms suppression instead of actually fixing our issues. What brand of collagen powder do you use? I use Great Lakes Collagen. I really like their quality. Why do people say coconut oil can be inflammatory? I'm not really sure. Maybe it's the processing. Not all coconut oil is created equal, so we want to make sure it's hydrogenated and it doesn't have any of the leftover like coconut irritants in it. Some people are really allergic to coconut. But yeah, I don't know why. There are some people that still are living by the saturated fat lie that it is inflammatory. Sorry, last question. You don't need to be sorry, and you can ask as many questions as you want. But non-homogenized milk isn't available here. Is organic grass-fed Whole Foods milk okay to start off? Yeah, I think whatever you can get your hands on. And not everyone needs to drink non-homogenized milk. The reason I always say non-homogenized is because homogenized milk destroys the lactoferrin in milk. And lactoferrin is this specific compound that actually binds to iron in the gut, which protects you from having pathogenic overgrowth because bacteria is going to eat that iron. And so it can be a really awesome compound. Also, the homogenization process is, they're pushing these little fat globules and pushing air into the milk. And so extra oxygen can cause more gut irritation. And so for people who are really sensitive to dairy, they tend to do better on non-homogenized milk, but that's not always the case, and some people are fine either way. So that's the reason why I say it, but I don't think you need to stress if you cannot find non-homogenized milk. I think the stress of not being able to find it is way worse than just drinking the damn non-homogenized milk or homogenized milk. Since you had celiac, does that mean it's reversible? I think everyone gets really slapped with all of these diagnoses without actually getting to the root of the problem. To say that, we can start to argue all day to say did I really have it? Or did I have gut inflammation? Was I constantly eating foods that I was sensitive to? There are some theories that saying that celiac is simply a riboflavin or a vitamin B2 deficiency. I mean, there are a million different ways we can go about it. I don't know. I can't say celiac is reversible because I was given 3 autoimmune diagnoses. But I will admit that the doctors really had no idea what was going on with me. And so they were just kind of desperate to put me into these groups. And so maybe it is, maybe it's not. I personally just go by what my body says. I do not do well with modern wheat. I cannot eat it. I don't do it well with a lot of gluten-containing grains either. And so I choose not to eat them because I get kind of constipated and I just don't feel that great. I prefer to get my carbohydrates from roots and fruits. But I don't need to be 100% gluten-free, but I definitely don't eat just I'm not I can eat the wheat today. If it's fried or something like that, it's not happening. I still don't feel great eating wheat, but I don't get the pain or the excessive brain fog that I used to, because when I used to eat wheat, 7 years ago, I used to literally not be able to focus or look someone in the eye for about 14 days after I ate it. And so to say that I've improved is an understatement. So I don't know, it's one of those things where, is it reversible? Is it not? I don't know if I got properly diagnosed in the first place. I mean, I was diagnosed with it, but I'm not really sure. So I kind of stray away from saying those things. OMG, I was diagnosed with celiac around the same time, and I would go near a grain of wheat with a 10-foot pole. How did you learn that you could tolerate some? Well, I had to start experimenting with it, which is always the most frightening thing. But I think it's just important to kind of know your body's limits. Like, I got my body to a point where I was like, I feel really great. And then I was like, well, I'm going to try, some sourdough. And so I do better when wheat is properly fermented. But like I said, I don't do really well with modern wheat, or the fortification of wheat destroys me. So like iron enriched wheat, like, oh, stay away from me. Do not touch me. But like einkorn wheat and spelt and things like that, I tend to do okay on, as long as I'm not like consuming them like 4 times a day. Do you have any recommendation for a child that has been traumatized that can calm him down at night? I don't really know the situation, so if it's like a trauma, yeah, that's really tough. I would consider like binaural beats or ASMR or soothing sounds. So the first thing, you always want to go sensory. So I usually am thinking, okay, what can I do sound-wise? Like, think about the child's environment. What's going to be the most soothing thing? And I think knowing the child is very important. You know what's soothing to the child more than I do. But sound-wise, what's going to be soothing? Is it going to be waves crashing against, or rain falling down, or maybe a very gentle talking voice? There's lots of different sound therapies out there that a lot of people use. ASMR is actually very helpful for children a lot of times, and a soothing, calming, mothering voice is sometimes what a child needs. The next thing is, so feeling, like the touch. Do they need a weighted blanket? Do they need to be wrapped like a burrito? Do they need to be, and even think down to the pajamas that they're in. What are they in? Are they comfortable? Are they clean? Is their hair, being pulled? Like, everything. Think about like when you're irritated or you're traumatized, like you want to be enveloped with a comforting surroundings. I think a glass of milk with some sugar in it before bed is usually a great place to start for a child, to kind of soothe them and calm them down before we opt for things like supplements. But maybe aromatherapy wise, maybe certain scents would be very helpful, like lavender, or like a soothing sleep blend that you can find online. And then just kind of thinking about what the child needs in addition to that. So if there is, that still doesn't work, then there are some like sleep blends for children, like supplement wise, that are like herbal blends specifically made for children. But I would really focus first on the environment, first on comfort, first on just making sure that they're comforted and comfortable, and using like therapies that are sound, smell, touch, and then of course something with sugar and milk before bed. And a lot of times that's enough to at least calm a child down, but I don't know about trauma, like that could be something that needs to be further explored with an expert, like a psychologist or something like that. My sis had a saliva hormone test and it told her high testosterone, low progesterone, and normal estrogen, but has estrogen high symptoms. Yeah, saliva tests are not really super accurate for sex hormones. They can be okay accurate for stress hormones, but sex hormones, they don't tend to be as accurate. But yeah, I mean, you can have a lot of estrogen stored in your tissues and it's not getting out because you have low progesterone. So low progesterone usually leaves estrogen not mobilizing very well. Keep in mind you need both progesterone and thyroid hormone to mobilize and detoxify estrogen properly. So a lot of times when we don't have either of those things, estrogen kind of just sticks around in the tissues, but a lot of times tests will come back either like normal levels, or a lot of times I've actually seen women say, I have a low estrogen. I'm like, I don't think you do. And once we get their progesterone levels normal and we actually get their bodies more metabolically functioning or metabolically stable by eating frequently, keeping blood sugar balanced, a lot of times they start to move estrogen and actually have estrogen dominance for a while after they get their other hormones up. So that would make sense. The biggest goal with that is to get her progesterone levels up, because a lot of times when the adrenals are stressed, so PCOS sounds like she has like a very common PCOS type pattern. When the body's under a lot of stress and when there's lots of estrogen in the tissues, a lot of times a woman who can't make progesterone is going to make testosterone. And so estrogen can aromatize into testosterone, and so getting those progesterone levels up will be both anti-androgen androgenic and anti-estrogenic, which will really help with her symptoms. But your gut is telling you correct. If she has estrogen dominant symptoms, there is more to the story. And I've seen this in so many women. They are being told that they have low estrogen or normal estrogen, when in reality they're not moving estrogen because their other hormones are not in a place to move it. Been doing Fully Nourished for 3 weeks. Haven't fully eliminated PUFAs totally. Eating out, that's fine. I always feel like I mess up everything when I do. Any advice? Don't stress about it. It's really the ratio of saturated fats to polyunsaturated fats. And taking vitamin E when you eat out or are exposed to PUFAs is a good idea. It just helps mitigate the effects a little bit, but it's not a big deal. I wouldn't stress about it too much. I sent you a message today about banana flour and how it's supposed to significantly help with PCOS. Have you heard of it? Yeah, it's a resistant starch. So PCOS has a lot to do with inflammation a lot of times, where inflammation is affecting and women with PCOS tend to have really bad gut issues, so I could see how sometimes the implementation of a resistant starch like banana flour could possibly help. I'm not really sure how it would help with every single woman with PCOS. I think it would be probably a case-by-case basis, but I'll definitely take a look at the DMs. All right, guys, Instagram's giving me 1 minute, so I'll answer as many as I can before they cut me off. Can my boyfriend do everything I'm doing with Fully Nourished? Oh, yeah. The only thing is, obviously the cycle stuff, but yeah, everything that you're doing, he could do. Will a lamp with 10,000 lux do anything beneficial? I'm not really sure. It sounds like that's probably like a mood therapy light. Being exposed to bright light when you're living in a dark place can help kind of wake you up for the day and get your pituitary gland, communicating with your body. So yeah, being exposed to bright light in the morning can be really helpful. Even if regular candles aren't being burned, but they're around the house with no lids, is that still toxic? Yeah, if you can smell them, their fragrances are pretty toxic. But yeah, they're more toxic if they're being burned. Amber said she's been missing these lives the last couple weeks, going through a weird transition period in my life. Happy to be here. I miss you so much, and I love you. All right, guys, bye.